talking about the call for the Constitutional Convention is because I've been working on this since the 1980s. I am the National Constitutional Issues Chairman for Eagle Forum, and many of you know who Phyllis Schlafly is. And so this last year I've been especially engaged. I worked on it in the 80s and the 90s. And Juanita reminded me today, you know, Nevada voted in years ago to pass an Article 5 convention. It's also being called the Convention of the States. It's all the same, Constitutional Convention. And then after they voted for that, the Assembly, I worked with Bob Price, Assemblyman Bob Price, and they expunged that record. But you'll never see those that are in favor of this. Maybe they don't even know, but it has been expunged, so it's invalid in Nevada, and we haven't got a call for a convention. The first thing you should do when you look at this Convention of the States or Article 5 Convention or Constitutional Convention, CONCON, is look at Article 5 in the Constitution and see exactly what it says. And so this is what it says. The Congress, whenever 2/3 of both houses shall deem it necessary, shall propose amendments to the Constitution, or that's the way it's always been done every single time since the original Constitutional Convention, or on the application of 3/4 of the several states by convention in the 3/4 thereof. So that's all we know about how this is to take place. There are no rules. A lot of people like Mark Levine and other people will be telling you there's all kinds of safeguards. This is what we know about Article 5. It's right here. And Congress calls the convention, which will mean they determine the place and most likely the rules and how the delegates are going to be selected. Now that's critical. There's a lot of discussion about that among those who are supporting this, like Michael Ferris, who envisions himself as the chairman of the convention. But with Harry Reid and Congress determining where this is going to take place, when it's going to take place, and most likely what all the rules are, I don't think conservatives are going to have much of a voice. You've been to some conventions, Republican meetings, haven't you? And he who has the gavel makes the rules. It doesn't matter what the real rules are. So you need to keep that in mind. A constitutional convention would be the most important political event of our time, of our nation, since the beginning. And there isn't anybody that's not going to want to be there. Every special interest group, everybody that's got an axe to grind, everybody with their own amendment, they're all going to be there. And you can anticipate that California isn't going to say when the conservatives get the call through, oh, we don't want to participate. Or New York's going to say, oh no, just have it without us. Or Wisconsin's going to say, oh no, never mind, we don't care that we, or Vermont, it's already passed an Article 5 call, we're going to talk about that later, to destroy your freedom of speech. So I want to talk a little bit about the real threats to this. They tell you a lot of things, they write a lot of stuff, but all we know is right here, okay, in Article 5. And you can look that right up. Now, former Chief Justice Warren Burger, who was the highest authority who have ever spoken on this issue, said, I have also repeatedly given my opinion that there is no effective way to muzzle or limit the actions of a constitutional convention. The convention could make its own set of rules and set its own agenda, and Congress might try to limit the convention to one or amendment or to one issue, but there is no way to assure that the convention would obey. Now you read in Article 5, it says for the purpose of proposing amendments in the plural. It does not limit it in Article 5 of the Constitution. Now if we go and see what's happening now to this, we can look to such groups that are promoting this as the Move to Amend. Do any of you know who Move to Amend is? You should look it up online. They are an incredibly organized liberal organization that has over 9 pages of organizations promoting them.
They're sponsored by MoveOn.org too.
Yes, absolutely. So when you go on Move to Amend, you can read the amendment that they're proposing. This is already passed as an Article 5 call in the state of Vermont, and there were some 10 referendums, and I believe it was, I can't remember if it was, I think it was in Wisconsin this year that passed it in there. And so what they tell people, you don't want the corporations to control money for candidates, do you? Oh no, we're not in favor of corporations. So they want to repeal the decision that the Supreme Court made which allowed us to participate in campaigns. And I'm trying to remember, I've been on vacation this week and Grandma can't remember everything. Anyway, this is their amendment that they want. The federal, state, and local government shall regulate, limit, or prohibit contributions and expenditures, including a candidate's own contributions and expenditures, to ensure that citizens, regardless of their economic status, have access to the political process, and that no person gains as a result of their money substantially more access or ability to influence the election in any way. So what they want to do, and I'm a member of the Independent American Party, running for Congress, I would have no voice. I wouldn't have any way to object to what's going on because they wouldn't even let me print a business card without being heavily regulated or shutting down the whole thing. You think that conservatives are going to have a free chance in this? No way. They're going to shut down free speech entirely because money is free speech. How do you run a campaign without money? That's absurd. So that's what their plan is. They want to pass this, and they're trying to do it in the traditional way, and they're also working on it in an Article 5. And so you need to be well aware of that even though the conservatives think they're the only ones that are going to use the Constitutional Convention, they're very arrogant to be so foolish. Very, very arrogant. Now, how many of you have control of your local county commission? Control your commission?
No.
How about your city council?
No.
No? How about the state legislature?
No.
Do you have control over your congressman?
No.
How do you think you're going to control a constitutional convention? Are you that arrogant? They are. Those that are promoting this, like Glenn Beck and Mark Levine and Michael Ferris and many others, believe that they, by some unique power that none of the rest of us possess, will be able to leave the liberals at home and they'll control the convention.
Yeah.
And if you ask me, that's nothing but pure arrogance. Absolute, complete arrogance. Now, one of the things, and the one thing that Move to Amend is trying to do is to repeal the Supreme Court decision on Citizens United. That's what I was trying to remember, and I just had it on here, didn't remember to say it. Now, who else is very interested in a constitutional convention besides Move to Amend? Do you know who just wrote a book about how we're going to change the Second Amendment? I've always said the first thing to go in a constitutional convention will be our right to keep and bear arms. Well, the Supreme Court Justice, formerly John Paul Stevens, has just written a book about 6 amendments that he wants to have passed by, in some way. He doesn't necessarily say by a constitutional convention. And I'll read you what he has to say about that. Let me get it right here. He only wants to put 5 little words into the Second Amendment. So let's see what those are. Okay, here they are. This is the Second Amendment. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms, and this is what he's adding, when serving in the militia. When serving in the militia shall not be infringed. So what that does is take away your individual personal right to keep and bear arms and defend yourself. And this is what is being promoted by former Chief Justice John Paul Stevens. So you know that all of those people out there that want to take our guns are going to be very interested in a constitutional convention, in a convention of the
I hate
states.
to interrupt you because you're on a great roll. What she just said is in the new Common Core approved textbooks. It's already been changed in the textbooks.
Yes.
Just wanted to interject. I'll shut up.
Thank you. And you see how they have planned this all along. This is what they have. So your right to keep and bear arms is in jeopardy. Your right to free speech, your whole political access. If you don't have free speech, you have no political freedom at all because you can't participate. And those things are in jeopardy through a possible call for a constitutional convention, or they call it a convention of the states. And one other thing, you know, there's a lot of conservatives. The biggest problem we have, I served every week from January to May. I coordinated a national conference call with Eagle Forum and with many of the Ron Paul groups and other people who were interested, the John Birch Society, and others who were interested in stopping the call for the Constitutional Convention. And I organized that, and there were people from all over the nation participating. One of the things we found is our biggest those in favor of this are conservative Republicans. And I want to tell you about a couple of things that I challenged them with. Right now, every state is receiving between 19 and 49% of its state budget from the federal government. Now, when any state legislator tells me that they want a balanced budget, I said, well, did you want to just slice that piece that's in Nevada, that we're getting 25.48% of Nevada's budget that comes from the federal government? Did you just want to take that out so we can help balance the federal budget? There's no conservative Republican, except maybe somebody like Don Gustafson, who would ever vote against a federal mandate or federal money. They say, yes, we want the budget balance, but don't take our money.
Yeah.
There's none of them that will vote against it. And if they won't vote against federal mandates and federal money, then they aren't honest about either wanting a balanced budget or about having a constitutional convention to have one. And some states have as much as 49% of their budget coming from the federal government. So this is really an honesty issue to me. If you want to balance the budget, start with Nevada. Stop taking federal mandates. Stop taking federal rules. And if you believe in federalism, this is part of the Convention of the States. They want to stop the overreaching power of the federal government. Who doesn't? We sure do. We're working on it, you know? So, but they don't want to say no to the money. So this is critical. They're really hypocrites if they're not willing to cut out the federal money coming into this state for all their pet projects. Exactly what they're doing. Now, when this came up in Utah this year, I'll just read you this little part here. My Utah chairman for Eagle Forum over there, Gail Ruzicka, was in a meeting with some of the people that were promoting the Constitutional Convention. And she challenged them. She said, what's going to happen if we get this through and they have to balance the budget? Won't they have to raise the taxes in order to balance the budget? Oh, we said, yes, of course they will. But then that'll make the people mad and maybe they'll do something. But we've been mad for a long time and nothing has changed. They keep voting for taxes down at Carson City and in Washington, D.C. And so they'll just take more of our money for their bankrupt government programs and send it overseas for unwinnable wars and not protect our borders like we want and all of these other things. So this is what we have to look forward to balance the budget, is to raise the taxes. Well, what are you going to do? There's two things you can do to balance the budget, isn't it? What I do at my house is cut spending. Because I can't raise taxes on you to pay for my house. But the federal government and the states, what do? They pass new taxes every time.
Or they print new money.
Yes, that's what they're doing now. They're printing money. Now, the other point of that is those of you that understand the Federal Reserve, we can never balance the budget until we get rid of the Federal Reserve, because they just print money and then they charge us interest on it. And that's a long discussion for another day, but that's exactly the situation. So you can never balance the budget in case when we have the Federal Reserve. So we talked about these issues, the great threat to our right to keep and bear arms, the great threat to our right to free speech, and our political activity that will come through a constitutional convention. Now, a lot of these conservative groups are saying, well, we are going to pass a law in our state that tells how we will choose the delegates. Okay, that doesn't mean that Congress won't decide how to choose the delegates. And they say, well, and we're going to tell them that they have to do exactly what we say or we're going to recall them. Do you think in the middle of a constitutional convention, the most important event in our time, and certainly maybe in the whole United States, that in the middle of this, when they're voting on the floor and they don't vote right, they're going to say, hey, you got to come home and have no representation or have the alternate take place? It's not realistic. It's simply not realistic. It's not how it will happen, because things move so fast in a convention that you don't even have time to do that. But they can pass all the rules they want, but if Congress sets the rules, they're irrelevant anyway. Now, how will they determine how many delegates each state gets? Okay, will it be the governor? Will it be proportional so that California gets, what do they have, 54 congressional districts? And we'll get 4? Will it be like the original Constitutional Convention, that each state had 1 vote, although they had several representatives that determined how that vote would be cast? We don't know. It's not in Article 5, and we can anticipate that Congress I would expect that Congress is smart enough to know that they better set the rules if they want to control it. Who will be going? Will it be the rank and file conservatives in this room, those that are against Common Core? Will they be chosen as the delegates?
Probably not.
Or will it be our state legislators who are in leadership, heaven help us? Or maybe our congressman, or maybe the governor, heaven help us? Or who will, the head of the Republican Party, the head of the Democrat Party? We don't know, but it's not going to be you and me. They don't want us there talking about constitutional issues. You know, I went to the International Women's Year Conference back in 1977 when they were trying to pass the so-called Equal Rights Amendment, and I was an alternate delegate there. What an incredible fiasco. They had the whole agenda laid out, and it didn't matter what anybody said that opposed. They were silenced in every way, and that's what will happen to any of the true voices that believe in constitutional government at a convention. I mean, just think about what happens in a convention. The gavel goes down, and that's the answer. They could say, okay, now we're going to pass these 5 words to the Second Amendment, and there's all confusion in the room. Done! Like they did at the Democrat when they were trying to take out God out of their platform. Now, so we don't know how that will happen. Now, what they'll say, there's a really good safeguard in the Constitution so that whatever passes a constitutional convention, or they like to call it a convention of the states or an Article 5 convention, a really good safeguard. And what is that safeguard? So that after it passes a convention, then it has to go back for ratification to 34 states. Now originally it needs 3/4 of the states. That's 38 states. Right now it takes 34 states, and they've got about 22 have passed a balanced budget amendment, which I believe they'll use those and combine them with anything else they need to get to their number once the powers that be are interested in a constitutional convention. So, is that a good safeguard to pass it back to the states? You know, all the states voted for the 17th Amendment, so we now have the IRS. They weren't very smart in that, so I don't have a lot of confidence. But there's another issue. What happened in the original Constitutional Convention? How did they ever get the Constitution passed, you know? Because in the Articles of Confederation, what did it require? 100% unanimous agreement to change anything in the Articles of Convention. That's why it didn't work, one of many reasons. What is the one now? Well, they changed it then so that instead of having to have 13 states approve the Constitution through the Constitutional Convention, it only took 9. So they changed in the convention the ratification process. They wiped out the rule before and they made a new process. And so they tell me, well, this is a safeguard. Well, when lately did you see Congress obeying the Constitution? And so if they pass a new rule, are they going to obey it then? I don't think so. And you know what they've done. They've completely obliterated the Constitution. They've done nothing about Obama and his unconstitutional executive orders. And so we can't have confidence in them. I have no trust in the government whatsoever. And you know, we shouldn't have trust in our government. The founding fathers warned us. They didn't have trust in King George. They didn't have trust in government. Who did they trust? God. And God. They trusted in God. And sometimes the people make mistakes too. They were not trusting in pure democracy, were they? No, they didn't. They trusted in a process which had a lot of gridlock in it. Gridlock's a good thing. It doesn't allow the government to do things they're not supposed to do and shouldn't be doing. Gridlock is a savior of us. Just think how many bad things we'd have without gridlock. So they sell us this line. So anyway, I'd like to take a couple of questions, but I want to finish with this. And this is from Juanita Cox many years ago, and I've used it in all the things I've done. I've seen many miracles at the legislature and things that we didn't think we could possibly win. This last time we defeated Planned Parenthood. It won in the Assembly Committee, it won in the Assembly, it won in the Senate Committee, and it went to go to the Senate floor. We had, Lynn reminded me, 63 people there to oppose it. We had thousands of emails going in, and yet they passed it all the way through. It would have taken away all the rights of the local committees. And what happened in the end? Because we had fought for marriage between a man and a woman, and it was such a bloody battle, the chairman, the majority leader of the Senate, did not want that burden on his candidates running this time. So miraculously, after it passed the Senate committee, it should have gone to the Senate floor. What happened? It never got to the floor. And it was an absolute miracle. I mean, I worked my guts out on that. I prayed people there. I never prayed so hard in my life. We had an incredible number of people helping and working, and the Lord in the end intervened. One day I was standing in the bathroom at the legislature, and this woman says to me, Janine, do you know that they named you lobbyist of the year? I said, you're joking me. That can't be. Yeah, it was the Gazette Journal. I said, that can't be for sure. She said, no, I went out of there and looked it up. And sure enough, there it was. Lobbyist of the year. Why? Because I had defeated Planned Parenthood and stopped their bill. I said, well, I feel very uncomfortable about having that on my shoulders because it wasn't me that defeated that bill, it was God. But I said, I'm trying to be a servant, so I'll accept it in that way. But you see, miracles can happen. So as we're fighting this, and all the money is on the other side. Mark Levine mentioned to his people in Virginia that he'd always struck, not Mark Levine, Michael Ferris, who's the head of the homeschool group, who plans to be the chairman of this convention. He mentioned to the people in Virginia that after he'd started this move to have a constitutional convention, they didn't have any more trouble with money flowing in. Now, what good cause do you know doesn't have trouble with money? We've been going on a wing and a prayer our entire lives. I mean, it's barely getting over. I got gas today to get to the legislature. We're doing okay. So, you know, that's my experience with good causes. So I have real suspicions, and there are some links to some real bad money people on the other side of this. I don't have all those proven out, so I'm not going to mention them, but I would just make you aware. I would make you aware of that. So if there are any questions, I want to finish with this. Be realistic in this fight, because you could lose your entire Constitution in this battle if you're not aware of what's happening. It will be your own Republicans and your own conservatives that do it to you. And you need to tell other states. We have a huge battle going on in Arizona right now. Be realistic and expect a miracle. Yes, question.
Janine, is one of your concerns that, let's say, the people that are opposed to you have a good record of getting control of things? I'll give an example. The Ford Foundation was funded by Henry Ford, and today it probably disagrees with everything that Henry Ford believed in. You know, they're anti-business, they're pro-government control, they're anti-liberty. Is that one of your concerns, this track record of behind-the-scenes maneuvering being done more effectively by the other side, so to say?
Certainly. I see a pattern of the will of the American people being ignored in Congress and the state legislatures and those that have money. He who has gold makes the rules. So there are many sources. Yes. Yes.
Just a couple of quick things. Number one,
Louder.
What do you see as an alternative to fix this country? Number one. And number two, tomorrow in the Constitution meeting that we have up at Del Webb, we're going to be talking about both sides. So people want to hear the other side.
And that's fine. And they have a lot of very feel-good ideas. And I hope you will remember some of the things you've heard today. What's my alternative? The only alternative we have under the Constitution is political action like we're doing right now. There isn't any magic bullet. We can put our entire Constitution in jeopardy and all of our rights by calling a convention of the states or a constitutional convention, which is the same thing. We can do that. It makes us feel good that we maybe get a balanced budget out of that and get our Constitution back. Or we just have to go to work and continue to do what we've been doing. And it's hard because we know we don't control the city council or the county commissioner or the state legislature or Congress. We have to start where we are and begin there. The other day I was talking to my county commissioner, who happens to be a lawyer, and I said, every level of government is corrupt. Oh, he said, no, the Elko County Commission is not corrupt. I said, oh, really? I said, I was in there 2 weeks ago at your hearing, and you were approving federal grants for Elko County. You're not here with your hand out to the federal government like everybody else? In my opinion, that's corruption, because you have now compromised the needs of your people in your county to what the federal government will dictate to.
Right.
Okay, so he goes, oh, he's a Republican. Oh, didn't even think about that. Yes, he is a Republican. They're all Republican on the county commission in Elko County, and I like them. But they need to broaden their understanding on that. So there isn't an easy silver bullet on what do we do. But certainly the Constitutional Convention is not the answer.
might we not lose everything?
Yes.
By continuing what we've been doing?
Well, we might, no, we are losing it.
That's what I mean.
Let's be realistic, we are losing it right now. But we could lose it all at one swath if we have a constitutional convention. And we could even lose, now right now we have a constitution, and they're ignoring most of it. But at some point in time, there may be an opportunity for us to hold them accountable, that we might begin to get some constitutional people involved. If they change the Constitution, if they take away the right to keep and bear arms and enslave us, if they take away our right to free speech, then what chance do we have? Okay, so there aren't a lot of good choices, I understand that, but people say, we gotta do something. So, my house is on fire and it's burning down, and I've gotta do something, and the only liquid I can find to do something with is a can of gasoline. So I pour the gasoline on my burning house so it burns down completely. That's my idea of a constitutional convention.